Okay, now I'm nervous because it may sound like it was a big deal or something. Okay, let me explain who I really am. Okay, I am the third of 9 boys. I was raised in Idaho in a town called Chubbuck. Okay, everyone heard of that? Okay, that's because it isn't anywhere. Okay, my older brothers, younger brothers are amazing. My younger brother was the poster man for ZCMI men's department for a year. So my older brother was sophomore, junior, senior class president, and he got bored his senior year and decided to take on wrestling and took second in state on accident. And I'm all, yay. I wrestled for many years and never got that good. So I was looking forward to opening my mission call and being called to open Russia and become famous for doing so and converting the Tsar or whatever it was at the time. And instead they called me to Detroit. I wasn't even sure where Detroit was. And so that was kind of the beginning of things. I was okay at things, A-, B+ student. I thought if I could just do what I do in school, you know, if you study harder, you get better grades. If you practice your violin, I was a violinist for 10 years because the girl I had a crush on in 4th grade started playing, so I started playing and she quit the next year. And I kept playing for 10 years. But I remember my older brother saying, "Would you please make him stop? It sounds like he's killing cats in his bedroom." I got pretty good after a while, decently good. But with the violin, you practice and you get better, and you get better results. I was a wrestler, wrestled for many years. If you practice, you get better. As a student, you practice, you get better. Just so you know, if you get called on a mission to Detroit, if you practice, you do not get better. You do not get better results. The average number of baptisms in Detroit is 1 for 2 years. And I learned that companions can get boring after about 2 days. They're guys. Do I have to explain that one? Okay. What are you thinking about? Okay. But there were a few things that I decided to do for fun, to keep myself busy. I started memorizing scriptures to try to keep my head busy, and I accidentally memorized 450 verses in 9 months. Something happens to your brain when you start doing that. You start cross-referencing, you start believing things, you start being amazed by what you run into. And there was a couple of phrases that started to throb in my brain. One of them was, "The noble and great ones of the final generation, the noble and great ones of the final generation." I thought that is so exciting for somebody else. As one of my responsibilities to serve people correctly, I've made sure I've averaged at least 1 general conference talk per day for 30 years to compare everything we teach. For those who don't know, Bishop didn't reference, by profession I am there's not really an explanation for it in what I really do in the professional world. What I really do is I help people clarify their value system, and then I help them live up to it. I help people find things that aren't going according to plan. Before I get into that, I was reviewing some conference talks from 1970s. And the speaker was speaking to a room of youth, and he said, "The youth among us now, those of you who are here, you youth are the noble and great ones of the future generation. The world will be built upon your shoulders." So I'd like you to raise your hand if you were a teenager or a youth in the 70s? No, you are like 12. Okay, keep your hand up, please. Now, that was of the final generation, noble and great ones, so that would mean that those who were teenagers in the 80s were also the noble and great ones. So teenagers in the 80s, raise your hands. So 70s and 80s. Guess who also were the noble and great ones of the final generation in the 90s? Raise your hand if you're a teenager in the 90s. Okay, where's Dallin? Don't raise your hand yet, Dallin. After the year 2000, who was a teenager in the 2000s? Okay, 2010s, 2020s. Is there anyone who does not have their hand up who was a teenager before 1970? Okay. Now here's my challenging question for you. Do you actually believe you're one of the noble and great ones of the final generation? Is there something that you have heard in your mind that says, how lovely for others? Or a common one amongst us men, how neat for others, but I have sinned too much. We haven't found any women who sin yet, but we get lots of male clients who do. Even as recent as a few weeks ago, General Conference, President Nilsson was quoted to have said, "Our Heavenly Father has reserved many of his noble spirits, perhaps his finest team." His finest team. I know, you look at the guy in the white shirt who's not wearing a tie next to the kid in the yellow shirt who's chewing gum like he's got 4 sticks in his mouth, and you're thinking to yourself, finest team. Now, I want the two of you to raise your hand faster. Who's faster? Which one of you is the more awesomest? Ooh. You see, I don't know if you know this, but at the same phase of time in adolescence when girls are starting to decrease their self-confidence, the young men are starting to increase their self-confidence to a point of ridiculousness. I need not point out that I was one of them. I work with marriages that have been catastrophized. On an average day, I hear 4 to 6 women crying. I work with men who are asking the question, I don't know what happened. I'm a good man, and I believe them because I interview them, and they are good men. And these are the noble and great ones. And so one day someone asked me the question, okay, Mr. Scientist, what are the common denominators of the people that you work with? What is wrong with them? It took me a minute to think about it. And then I answered, those who I work with are the warriors who are the greatest threats to Satan. You see, Satan doesn't pull together an army to go up against people who don't matter. We learned a long time ago, and it's easy to come to the conclusion that, I wonder if God's a good psychologist. Anyone want to debate on that? Okay, can we just assume he might know a little bit about the way people think and feel? I find when I'm running out of useful information textbooks, I just dial him up. Hey, you want to explain this to me? He's all, no, you haven't earned it yet. And I say, but the people need it. And he's all, oh, are you kidding me? But, well, in addition to God being a great psychologist, can we also assume he's a great military strategist? He thinks about fighting wars, spiritual wars, etc. As I was doing my work and getting to know people, the textbooks said some sad things. The textbooks told us that there's a lot of philosophers who believe that men, people, are evil by nature, that people are selfish by nature, that people just want to take and use. I've been in this field for over 17 years, and that's not what I found. That's not what I found. Every person I meet is extremely dedicated to getting life right. They want to figure it out. But there's one common question they have that is the same one I had that started me into this profession. I have a funny quote that goes with it. It came from my dad. Farmers from Idaho, eloquent in their language. Son, for such a smart kid, you sure do some stupid things sometimes. Thanks, Dad. That's inspiring. But it was also true. Why do smart people do stupid things? Why? Why can't we just program ourselves? Why can't we just sit down and say, this is the plan. I am going to the gym tomorrow morning. I'm doing it. I'm going. I'm already seeing the facial expressions. Okay? Then something magical happens. Okay? Something magical happens where that motivation just evaporates. And even if you're one of those advanced, self-motivated people, you put a 3x5 card next to your alarm clock that says, you decided last night that you're going to the gym this morning and you want to. And you look at that card and say, who wrote that? Who was the idiot that wrote that? The Book of Mormon was written for our day. I have two kids, 12 years apart. Infertility will do that for you. My son is a knuckle dragger. For bedtime ritual, he wanted me to beat him with a Nerf sword on a regular basis until we were both sweating, and then he could sleep with a smile on his face. Oh, that was awesome. So when we read the war stories of the Book of Mormon, he's all, yeah, kill him, scalp him. Remember, I have 8 brothers, no sisters. I finally, 12 years later, get this adorable little cinnamon muffin-headed baby girl that smells so yummy. And as she's coming of age, and I'm reading, and I get to the war chapters of the Book of Mormon, and I'm all, oh, we're going to skip that. Okay, I just don't quite see why that would be fun to read to my little girl. But at the same time, I was getting more into my profession of doing therapy and working with families and individuals who were in pain. And I was just desperate to understand what was happening. What is going on? What is happening? The textbooks had all these really weird explanations like, deep in your subconscious, in a place that you're not quite sure of, you have a secret compartment that wants you to self-sabotage yourself. And you don't know it. And you can't find it, and you can't stop it. Because we will not admit that there is a Satan. Because then we'd have to change everything. The stake present earlier today, I was told, read the following quote from the 70s. How does Satan operate? What are his tactics? Using his superior knowledge, his unique powers of persuasion, half-truths, and complete lies, the evil one uses the spirit children who follow him, which many, plus mortal beings, who have yielded to his evil ways to wage war against Jehovah and his followers, and they will, if they can, influence us to become critical and to rebel against God and his work. Thus he destroys the souls of men. When I came home from my mission, I felt enough enthusiasm and a little bit of a frustration with my lack of opportunity to serve people, because not very many people want to listen to us. I wanted to find a way to become a paid missionary so I could feed my family. Did a lot of work to figure out that if you approach the field of psychology correctly and you make sure you serve people correctly, then you can feed your family at the same time and talk about spiritual principles. The presentation you're about to see today comes from a very unique angle. You see, about 30 years ago, when I had heard about becoming one of the noble and great ones of the final generation, I also heard Doctrine and Covenants section 4 verse 3 say, if ye have desires, you are called to the work. So I did what I normally do, and I go to God and say, I'm ready. Now, you know what those 22-year-olds are like. Naive, ambitious, ambitious. And so when you go to God and you say, let's do this, I'm ready to take on my work. He said, great, go talk to Captain Moroni. Okay. So I talk to Captain Moroni and I say, I'm ready. And he's going to tell me, you know what I want you to do, Maurice? I want you to get this sword and shield on. I want you to be in the front lines of battle. I want you to say charge, blood and guts everywhere. I want you to be the hero of everything. And I'm ready. And he's all, no, that's not your job. I'm all, come on. He's all, see that tree over there? Way over there on the edge of the Nephite nation? I'm all, yeah. So I want you to go sit in that tree. And I'm all, why? He says, I want you to watch the Lamanites. I want you to study their military tactics. I want you to understand how they do their work, what their stratagem is, because wouldn't it make sense that Captain Moroni would need spies to watch what the enemy's doing? We are told by quotes like this, and in the scriptures it talks regularly to Satan having tactics, Satan having strategies, Satan having methods. And I remember as a young man being very frustrated with the experience of, watch out for Satan, he's really good at being tricky. I'm all great. And it felt like someone was standing on the edge of the Vietnam forest with me and saying, there's some really scary stuff in that forest, return with honor. I'm all, do you want to give me a little more information? They're all, yeah, it's bad. And there's a really good chance you're going to come back seriously damaged. Good luck. Don't forget to read your scriptures and say your prayers. Could you please give us more information than that? So for 30 years, with the idea that Satan's real, Satan's smart, Satan is strategic, Satan is a scientist, what if we could figure out what he's doing? What if we could study him like sports, in athletics, where you study your opponent, watching film, getting familiar with his methodology? And then what if you could take it back and train the warriors to know what's coming? What if we could break it down into something that even teenagers could understand? What if we could break it down into something even men can understand? Okay? And I'm going to prove it to you today, because I brought with you some of my fellow warriors, some men who've studied this material very carefully. But before we get into that, okay, we need to make sure that you can internalize this experience. So I'm going to do a little bit of psychological manipulation on your brains with your permission. You okay with that? Okay. I assume you came here to have a meaningful experience. Those of you who do not need anything in the area of personal development, you can now go to sleep. For the rest of us, okay, if you would please, in your little electronic notebook, on the back of someone's head, in your phone, in your little paper notebook, okay, everyone get your hands available because you want to write something down. Unless you don't need to, because you don't have anything that you need to think about. I want you to write down your one thing. Do I need to explain that? Your one thing? You know that one thing you've committed to doing like for the last year or two or three, but you haven't done yet? That habit that you've wanted to get into, but you haven't done yet? Or that one thing you've wanted to stop doing? That one thing that you've wanted to stop doing, like, I promised myself I wouldn't do that? For instance, the most acceptable sin among adults men, losing their temper with their children. All in favor? Raise your hand if that's never happened to you, right? No. Never happens to me. Okay? I didn't know that was actually classified as something to worry about. I thought that's what you just do. As my dad said, if I don't make sure I do you old-fashioned style every once in a while, then how am I being a good father? Okay. Does anyone need any help finding their one thing? Because I'm really good at finding people's psychological problems in 15 to 30 seconds. Go ahead and raise your hand if you can't find anything. Naivety and arrogance. Just write those two down. It's in the dictionary. Let me just read up on them. Anyone else need help? Yes? You can't find your one thing? Okay, so there's nothing that you've wanted to do on a regular basis that you haven't been able to do, and there's nothing you've wanted to stop doing. Okay, and are you doing it as well as you want to? Okay. Okay, write that down. Okay, write that down. Your one thing. Okay? All right. Double check my notes here. Okay. What I thought was supposed to happen in the human brain was that you could set up your neurons in your brain like dominoes, and you just push the first one and you have them clickety, 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 click until you achieved what you wanted to achieve. We have these very common examples. Common examples are, I want to get up in the morning and go to the gym every day. Another common example is, I want to not yell at my children. Another common example is, I do not want to view pornography. Another common example is, I do not want to lose my patience with my spouse or do that one thing I do in my car when other people do that one thing with their car near my car. Okay? Here's the part that I want to make sure you understand. The same process the brain goes through when you commit to going to the gym and you don't is the exact same psychological process as someone who commits to not viewing pornography and then they do. You might think that you're having a different psychological experience and they're weirdos. If you want to be of service to those who are dealing with sexual self-mastery issues, things including in pornography, masturbation, crossing the line when it comes to their relationships with others, okay? The most important thing you can do is understand what it feels like to behave against your own value system. As long as you think you are different from them, they will not value your thoughts and feelings. What you're about to hear from these men, but let me warn you, you're not going to be able to understand it completely because we're about to give you about 12 hours of information in 20 minutes. To make it easier for you, on the handout card, you can see some reference material on one side, but with the bishop's permission, he's allowed us to give you access for free to the training handbook that has everything that we teach on this concept for you for free. You just use your QR code. If you don't know how to use it, just ask the kid in the yellow tie. He'll teach you how to use a QR code, right? Nod with me. See that? Mm-hmm. He's all, I have no idea what he's talking about. Okay. I've asked my fellow warriors to train you in a few concepts in a certain order. And you'll be able to, some of it will be referenced on the card and some of it will not. So bear with us because we are not church leaders, okay? I do not hold a church position that is in any authority over the bishop, all right? We are scientists and we are trainers of men. People do not come to us to repent. They come to us to teach them how to understand psychological warfare with Satan. And we work in conjunction with spiritual leaders. They function as the hospital on the outside of the war, and we function as the boot camp. We train the mind the same way athletes are trained in order to win their battles. We train the same way military people are trained to have high-speed, accurate, strong responses to temptation, high-speed accurate responses to torment, and high-speed accurate responses to turmoil, the three most common satanic attacks. So get ready to hear some pretty powerful information. These guys are going to try to share it in a way that is relatable and understandable. And I'll try to give some clarification, and then when we're done, we're going to try to teach you some application. Okay? Shall we? Casey?
Why do smart people do dumb things, then, is the question. I was at a state conference a few years ago, and a different question was posed that I think has a lot of value in its essence, but the content is probably off. And the question was, maybe you've heard it before, if you could have all of the rubies and diamonds in the world, or the Book of Mormon, which one would you choose? And I think that the essence of the question is like, are you going to choose God or anything else? And I think that that has a lot of value. I think where the content of the question gets off is it's not subtle enough. Because one of the attributes that Maurice left off about Satan is that he's a gentleman. Oh, he is so kind when he needs to be. Because if somebody comes at you like my friends used to do in middle school, and they swing their hand in your face like this, you're going to flinch. That's a full-on frontal attack, so you respond with a frontal defense. But Satan doesn't do that. He is so subtle. Oh, so subtle. Let me give you two examples. So let's say, for example, amongst the Nephites and the Lamanites. The Nephites are beating the Lamanites, and the Lamanites don't like that. They're angry, and so they're trying to figure it out. So one Lamanite's like, hey, I've got this figured out. Every time we go out to fight them, they kill us. So let's not do it that way anymore. So he says, I found this plant. And if I crush up this plant, we can put it in their water system, and then we can poison them by degrees, and they won't even know it. So the Lamanite commander's like, oh, that's brilliant. Do it, man. Do it. So they go out to their water source, and they put it in. But they put in just a little bit, because they don't want the Nephites to sense it, to taste it, to know that it's there. And so this happens over the course of 4 or 5 days, and then the Lamanites are like, you think it's been enough time, man? Yeah, it's probably been enough time. Let's go. Let's fight him. So then they go to fight the Nephites, and, Captain Moroni rallies them. He's like, come on, man, let's go out and get him. So they go outside to fight him, and the Nephites, can't hold their footing. And he's like, what are you doing? And the Lamanites are like, yes. Looks like it worked. Some of the Nephites, they're falling over. And the Lamanites are coming after him. And so Moroni's like, we can't do this, guys. We got to fight for our family, for God. And, they're not changing their course. They're still falling on the ground. And he's like, well, sing a hymn, guys. Just sing a hymn. Pray. Say a prayer. I mean, you're with me, right? That's ridiculous. Saying a prayer in that moment isn't going to change their brain chemistry. Let's bring it home a little bit closer. Well, not physically. We're going to be talking about the war in Vietnam. Let's say that you just got placed in Vietnam. And it's your job to go and find the enemy's base. But they were aware that you were coming. So when you landed, they attacked some of your men, but half of you got off. And so you're in the forest. You're trying to make contact on your radio. And you finally are able to make contact with somebody. And you hear this voice say, hello, you need to go 6 miles west, 3 miles north. We'll give you the coordinates. And you're like, oh, great. We've been looking for you guys. We are under attack. And he says, it's fine. I got you covered. 6 miles west, 3 miles north. Come to us. And they come there and boom, they were sabotaged. But right before the leader gets you, he pulls out his radio to show you how he used an American voice to let you know that he was an American and that he was trustworthy. What a gentleman. Turns out that's how Satan attacks us. Most of the time, Satan doesn't come at you with, you know what you should do? You should slap your kid because you're so angry. Because we're smart people. We're not going to do that if he comes at us like that. Satan most often doesn't come to you and say, you know what you should do? You should spend 6 hours watching a football game and eating nachos while your wife wants to spend time with you. He probably isn't going to say that to you. He also probably isn't going to say to you, you know what? Instead of going to work, you should stay home and look at pornography and drop all of your value system. He's probably not going to say that to you. But you know what he would say to you? Is he would say, hey man, you're a little bit tired. Why don't you just take a break? Why don't you just take a break? Or, your anger at your child is a little bit justified. Like, you told them to not knock down that cup, and they did. And so Satan is incredibly subtle, and if we can be trained to find how he's attacking, we can start to be aware of it, like Maurice was talking about. We can be spies. We can start to be aware of when he's attacking, and we can stop the attack before it ever starts. And I think that's probably step one. And probably the most important thing is understanding the enemy. Like Elder Bednar says, he's like that cheetah always coming. He's always coming, he doesn't stop, and he's always hungry, and he's coming for you. And so if you can be aware of Satan's subtle attacks, you can start to avoid them, and then win if the battle gets that close.
All right. Let's see if we can slow that down a little bit and see. That was awesome. Thank you. So let me make sure you understood what Casey was talking about there. Let's talk about the military guys in the forest on the radio, okay? And then they think they're following instructions of a trusted voice, and then the enemy is the one who was on the radio tricking them. Has anyone ever heard of a concept called negative self-talk? Okay, raise your hand if you've heard of a concept called negative self-talk. All right. What if Satan, in his military strategies, figure out how to talk to you in your own voice, in your head? Play back the recordings of some of the things you've heard in your head. Okay? Why are you so stupid? It's too bad other people think that you don't have any brains. So, you lost all your friends. Well, what you've done now is going to ruin everything. The scientists will tell you that's negative self-talk. Okay? As a scientist who's studied spiritual concepts for a very long time, we have learned that the spirit you came with before you were born would never talk like that. And the Holy Ghost would never talk like that. Then who is it? They tell us about it in all these conference talks. Did you know that the person in the last General Conference talk who mentioned Satan the most in a single talk was President Nilsson? 11 times in his Sunday morning conference talk. He says, please watch out for him. But as we've learned about any military opponent, he'll try to get more subtle and more subtle and more subtle. So when was the last time you checked to see if the voice in your head was not your voice? Even though it sounded like he was being a buddy, you might as well give up on this because you haven't succeeded 7 times so far. Okay? I'm referring to the guy in the yellow tie when he's picking up chicks at school. You'll get it right soon, bro. You just keep working on that. Okay? Just let me know if you need some help. Okay. To clarify and add value to what Casey said also about this story about the Lamanites putting something in the water. Imagine you're a soccer player and you've got a really good team, you're an athlete, etc., and you come up against this team that's just sick of losing. They're just sick and tired of losing to you. So they sneak around and they put some stuff in your big Gatorade jug. And it's not enough for you to really notice it, but you're sipping away at it and people are starting to get a little off. And so who do you blame first when your teammates aren't playing well? What are you doing? Dude, run faster, catch up, etc. Create some internal turmoil. All right? We don't have time to explain it all today. I'll give you the very short version of it. And then Seth's going to give us a little more of a scientific explanation. So you're going to have to stretch your brains out a little bit to be ready for some intense scientific explanation. For those of you who don't like science, you just go to sleep right now, okay? Because what's Seth's dynamic? You know, you're going to enjoy just listening to talk. But, my friends, you know that experience you have when you're driving down the highway or the freeway and a cop pulls up behind you with his lights on? 12-year-olds, oh yeah, I was driving my dad's car. Okay, do you remember how shocking that is and how it affects your body? Okay, would it surprise you if Satan, a student of psychology, studies that and says, oh, there's certain circumstances that take place that really mess with people's heads on a chemical level. We can have that shocking experience that, oh, I'm late for a test, or you might lose your job, and it's like, oh. If Satan's a military strategist, why are we not considering that he's willing to do psychological biochemical warfare? Seth, will you come up and try to explain that?
I wanted to start with a little thing for me. Back when I was much younger, I went on my mission. And I'd grown up in the church. I'd grown up with teachers constantly telling me, the Holy Ghost feels like a tingling up and down your spine, a burning in your bosom. And I honestly had no clue what they were talking about. So I go to the MTC, and they tell me that I'm supposed to help others to feel and recognize the Spirit, and that I'm supposed to identify it when it's there. Interesting, because I still didn't know what it felt like. The reason I bring that up is because so many of us have grown up in the church or have joined the church and still don't know what the Holy Ghost feels like. Some of us have learned it at one point and then become disconnected and lost track of that feeling. Are we taking the time to feel the Holy Ghost in our lives each day? Are we taking the time to help our children to know when the Holy Ghost is there? Do we have the courage to identify that? So much of this comes down to us being connected to the Spirit. When we're connected to the Spirit, we're able to win. The problem is, the other thing I didn't know was that Satan can talk to us, our spirits as well. He doesn't know what we're thinking, but he can nudge and prompt us. And he does this in many ways. Maurice has just talked about a few of those, where we call it negative self-talk. He gets us overwhelmed. He gets us stressed. And the reason he does that is because the front of our brains, the frontal lobes, are where our values are stored. It's where when we act from our values center, we're acting from our best selves. We're able to connect to the Spirit. But when we lose connection with our frontal lobe, we start moving into our midbrain, which is that animal brain. It's where the fight, flight, freeze happens at. It is also where we just start reacting and where our values get forgotten. If Satan can get us to this place, he can get us to do a lot of different things that we wouldn't usually do. So he starts by slowly getting us to be living in our midbrain. He disconnects us from our values. And he does this, if you look at your cards, on the right-hand side, you see a circle. At the top of that circle is a flash. That's some thought or some image that we just see for a second. Could be scrolling in YouTube. Some video pops up on the side and you just see it for a second and scroll right by it. We don't even think it mattered. The problem is that flash created a chemical dump in our brain. That chemical dump then moves and starts triggering feelings in our brains. Our brains don't like having partial feelings. They want to go figure out what that was. So, from there, we move to our filing cabinet. We think about, where have I seen this before? What was this? How did I react? The thing is everything after that flash, Satan's trying to nudge us one way or another. And if we aren't connected to the Spirit, he has a much easier job nudging us further and further. He's trying to get us to look for specific things in the filing cabinet, specific memories, specific reactions that we had. He's always trying to affect what we're going to find in that filing cabinet, because what we find in the filing cabinet brings us right back to another flash. The thing is the further we go in here and the more chemicals that are dumped in our brain, the faster this spin happens and the harder it is to react. When we talk about an alcoholic, as with an alcoholic, the more drinks the individual consumes, the less control they have. Thought processes are compromised, behavior is compromised, and choice, even the choice of whether or not to drink more, is compromised. So the question is, when a drinker, after many drinks, gets in the car and while driving runs his car into the telephone pole, did he choose to run his car into the telephone pole? No, he had lost his ability to choose how to drive correctly long before that. The reason we're talking about this is because with training, we can learn to recognize the feelings in our body that those chemicals cause. Some of you, as Maurice talked about, may have had that experience of lights turning on behind you in your car. That reaction happens so quickly, but then lasts for quite a while. I know it's happened to me before, and by the time I get to work, I'm still uptight. I'm still feeling that. And so these chemicals can last for a long time in our brains. And if we don't react to them, they just keep getting worse and worse and worse, and we just keep spiraling down. So with training, we're able to recognize those things happening earlier. We're able to recognize when the first flashes happen, when those feelings start to come, and we're able to react much earlier. And we're able to use specific drills and warrior chemistry to be able to counteract these effects that are going on in our brain, to pull ourselves out. But as we talk about that alcoholic, the more they drink, the harder it becomes and the less likely that they can even begin to choose. So the thing is, we need to recognize the spin and recognize those feelings that we are having and where they're taking us far earlier to be able to react to them.
All right, let's talk about how that applies. Please raise your hand if you've ever asked to your friends, man, I just had a slight brain chemistry shift. How about you? Whatever. All right, he's been trained. He knows how to do this. Okay, think about how military things have evolved over time. Like, we had to develop the motion detectors, heat sensors, all these things to be able to catch the enemy faster. What Seth's explaining to you, what we're explaining to you is this whole idea of I'm sitting there minding my own business and all of a sudden inappropriate thought to act against my value system. Okay, we are dealing with an intelligent military strategist here. He is not going to walk up to the portion of your city wall that you have all your guns on and you're ready for. Watch your thoughts, watch your thoughts, watch your thoughts, watch your thoughts. Okay, so he pulls to one side of that and he says, all right, if I can't get them on their thoughts, I'll get them on their feelings. Now, that doesn't work on women because they're always checking their feelings. Nod with me. Yes, do we have monitors? How do you feel? Oh, do you have an hour? Let me tell you how I feel. Okay, ask the guy how he feels. He goes, hungry. Can I get fries with that? Okay, now even more subtle, did you know that you can't have feelings in your body without chemicals? Chemicals are what stimulate feelings inside of your body. How cool would that be if Satan figured it out before you did? Isn't that neat? No, okay. Now I want you to notice something. Think of your one thing again. Everyone, do you need to look at your one thing? Look at your one thing, that thing you wrote down, the guy in the yellow tie. Do you remember what it was? I'm always all pizza, pizza, pizza. Okay. Do you know your one thing? Now I want you to notice something. Take a look at what your brain feels like at the time that you commit to it. When you're like, I got this. I'm totally going to do this. I'm ready for it. I'm totally into it. Now notice what it feels like when you're about to not follow through on it. That was a dumb idea. I don't even know why I was thinking that. Why do people come up with this? Or mine, I didn't know that anger was a real thing until I had a son. Okay? Oh my goodness. When you have 6 little brothers, you can go, good luck with that, Dad. Okay? When my son came of age, he was like, wow. I had no idea how many logical reasons there were to beat a kid's head against a rock. It's like, there's nothing that's going to fix him unless I just knock it out of his head. I am proud to tell you I never followed through on that temptation. There were some close calls. Okay, he's a mighty fine man now in his leather jacket and motorcycle. Okay, we have a good time together. Okay, the next thing you're going to hear from Dallin, you need to really be paying attention to your one thing and what it feels like, that really weird sensation of going from being committed, and every bishop will tell you that it's really confusing when you're a bishop because you're sitting there in a bishop's office and you're listening to someone say, Bishop, with all of my heart, I promise you I will not view pornography this week. And the bishop's doing everything he can to access the Spirit, and he's all, I believe him. Like, this is full integrity. Like, he's really locked in on it. 4 days later, I don't know what happened. I fell off the wagon. Okay? This is one of the greatest mysteries in human psychology, is how can you be committed to something and then drift away? Seth has introduced you to the process. By the way, that spin he was talking about, the average speed of a single spin is 1/2 of a second. Drip, 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 drip. Okay? Just sit there and hold still for a second and think about how aggravating that one child is, and within about 1 minute you go, okay? That's the opposite of appropriate psychological self-control. It's a neat experience, though, if you just want to get a little crazy in the head, okay? All right, don't do that, okay? It's not good for your brain. Okay, Dallin will now explain to you what happens as those chemicals build in your brain and lead towards behaviors that are contrary to your value system. Before he does, though, I want to make sure you understand something. I'm explaining some really scary things here. These are really complicated things, but you need to understand a vital concept from the Old Testament. Those that be with us are more than those that be with them. I am sad as a military student of psychology that I have to tell you what the Lamanites are capable of. I would prefer that you can just build tree houses and grow gardens and just be fine. But the reason your loved ones, and possibly you, are losing battles is not because you're calling Lamanites and asking them to come over. Okay? We are dealing with 7,000-year-old genius and his teammates. These are not amateurs. And if you carefully study President Nilsson's information and the others, they are telling us, you've got to be careful and watch this stuff, because he's coming with new strategies and a new way of thinking. Okay? This is not the 1800s anymore. This is psychological, biochemical warfare. Dallin?
So, you know when you were a kid and you would go cross-eyed and your parents would be like, don't do that, it's going to get stuck? No one told me that applies to sitting on the stand, because I think my new default neck position is this. So, I got a real crick in it, but I'm ready. Okay, so who's ready to learn? Okay. So chemical scale, that's what we call this. In the background, what Seth was talking about, we got the satanic spin, right? This spinning cycle of chemicals increasing in your brain. The chemical scale is what we use to measure and kind of tell how many times around that spin we've already gone. And these phases are very distinct, and as we've trained, we get better at recognizing them. And once you recognize where you're at, you can make decisions accordingly. But I'm just going to get started and tell you kind of what each of those stages are, right? So remember back to your one thing. So dads, beating your kid's head with a rock. That's really intense. But getting angry with your kids, right? If you're in school, I guarantee one of your one things is, how many times have you watched YouTube when you're supposed to be doing homework, right? Or how many times have you watched Netflix or played a video game when you should be doing homework and you want to be doing your homework, right? So think about your one thing, whatever it may be, right? This applies to everyone, not just Those who have really difficult things to go through. We all have difficult things to go through, and this scale applies to all of us. So level 10, that is the crash. We work backwards, right? So the crash. This is when you watch YouTube when you were supposed to do your homework. This is when you yell at your kids when you really, don't want to. This is when you view pornography. This is when you cross the line with your boyfriend after prom in the car, right? All of these different things apply to level 10. This is the crash, right? 6 through 9, we won't really talk about that because that's the fall, right into the crash. Level 5 is where we pick up again. Level 5 is the moment when your ability, your willpower to hold on to your value system has been exhausted, right? You give up. You either give up or you forget your values, right? So this is like, that's it. I'm up to my limit here. I'm yelling at my kid, right? Or that's it. This homework is so boring. I gotta watch some YouTube right now, right? Whatever it might be. That's it. That cake looks so good. I don't want to diet. I'm gonna eat it. The whole thing. I'm gonna eat the whole thing right now, right? So that's level 5. Does that make sense? Everybody's with me. Everybody's messed up, right? Hopefully. If you haven't, you can leave because this is only for people who mess up. So level 4. Okay, this is the irrational conversation. The irrational conversation, I like to think of it, if you've ever seen Emperor's New Groove with Kronk, one of my favorite characters of all time. If you haven't seen Emperor's New Groove, also leave because that's a great movie. Please don't leave. Okay. So he's got the angel and the devil on each soldier, right? And they're like going back and forth trying to convince him what he should do. And have you ever noticed like the devil's like doing handstand push-ups, which if anyone can do that, props to you, because I cannot do that. I just look like I'm dancing really poorly. Okay, but he's like, why should you listen to me? Because I can do this. And the angel's like, actually, that's a really good point. Look at what he can do, right? It's completely irrational. It's not anything that's going on. They're not talking about the relevant situation. That's kind of how our brains work at level 4 on the chemical scale, right? Something like, but you deserve this break right now. I don't care when this homework assignment is due, you deserve this break, right? Or with your kids, but they do not listen. The only way they could possibly listen is if I beat them. That's the only way this is going to get. If I beat it in one ear, it'll stay, right? Otherwise, it just goes out the other one, right? This is the back and forth. And you might have some back and forth, right? You might be like, but I really should get my homework done, or I do love my kids. I don't want them to hate me. Right? You can go back and forth there, but that's the irrational conversation. You're trying to rationalize your behavior past your value system. So then we go a little bit further up the scale, and that's level 3. Level 3 is what we call the temptation or the thought moment, and this is like, I don't know if any of you have ever had like an amateur demon. But amateur demons are kind of like, on the level 3 stage, they're like, hey, you know what would be really awesome? Is if you, like, how cool would it look like if your house was on fire? That'd be pretty awesome. You should just light your house on fire. And you're like, whoa, where did that come out? Wait, no one else has, like, fantasies about lighting their house on fire? Okay. No, right? That would be like a totally out of the blue. You would be like, that's so lame, I would never do that sort of thing. Casey was talking about that earlier. But instead, they're more subtle, right? They might be like, hey, dude, your parents are gone. You could maybe look at pornography. Or, hey, that cake looks really good. Or, hey, it is so early in the morning, there is no way you can get up and go to the gym right now. Right? It's this first thought that is putting you down the path towards not following your value system, not maintaining your value system. So why does that have any sort of weight, right? Like Maurice was talking about with going to the gym in the morning, if you set an alarm and you write this note card and you are committed to going to the gym, then why does that level 3, that temptation in the morning, have any sort of weight, right? Why does it mean anything to you when you have committed to not do it? Or same with the bishop, like you told the bishop, I'm not looking at porn anymore, right? And then midway through the week, all of a sudden, when that temptation comes, you have no willpower to push it out. Because Satan's really crafty and he knows that he has to encourage emotional or physical pain in our bodies, in our minds. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that in contrast, right? So we're going to skip all the way back to the very bottom of the scale, and that's level 0. Seth was talking about it a little bit. He alluded to it. That's when we're connected with the Spirit. Level 0 is where we want to be, right? We're connected with the Spirit. We want to do good. We want to serve other people. When we're at level 0, we're the best versions of ourselves, right? If you've ever been to like the really cool testimony meeting when you felt the Spirit strong and you got up and bore your testimony, or you went to trek or Aaronic priesthood camp and you just felt awesome. You're like, I could do anything. That's level 0, right? How many of you feel like you live this is rhetorical, every day at level 0, right? I'm guessing there's not a whole lot of you who feel that way. And if you do, you should probably be a general authority. So just call them up and volunteer. But most of us, we don't live like that, right? Life, it gets in the way. Life gives us negative circumstances. It gives us difficult things that elevate our chemical levels. And Satan doesn't even have to do anything with that, right? He can just let life happen, and all of a sudden we're having some chemical shifts, and he can manipulate that and encourage that and kind of rub salt in the wound on that. And so let's talk about how he does that, right? So you're from level 0, you go to level 1. Level 1 is when you just feel slightly off. One of the best ways I can tell if I'm level 1 is if someone I love, like my wife or my mom, asks me to do something. When I'm at level 0, they're like, hey, can you take the trash out? I'm like, ooh, yeah, I can take the trash out. Watch me take the trash out. I'm so good at taking trash out. And then when it's level 1, I'm like, oh, I don't really feel like taking the trash out. I can't believe you really asked me to do that. I would really rather just stay right here. I'm feeling pretty slothful right now. All right, so level 1 is when you're slightly off. Maurice talked about that chemical imbalance when the sirens go behind you. When that started, when those chemicals start to drip in your mind, that's level 1, right? Before you can put a name to it, how you're feeling, level 1. Which brings me to level 2, feelings. Guys, go ahead and tune out because we don't talk about feelings, right? Right. I think women, if feelings were crayons, women have the 64 pack, right? With the sharpener on the back. And in this, they can be like, I'm feeling exasperated. I'm feeling indignant. I'm feeling flabbergasted, right? Men, I think we have the 8 pack. And 2 of them are broken and one's shoved up our nose, right? It's embarrassing how bad we are at talking about our feelings. I work with guys every day talking about feelings, and I swear, what were you feeling? Tired, hungry, bored? Okay, you got anything else? Really anything, right? So Satan uses these feelings, right? And they feel so legitimate this time. My kids, they really didn't listen to me. I deserve to feel angry right now, right? Or that guy cut me off in traffic, I should be angry. Or this homework is so boring, I can feel bored right now. That's absolutely, how could I not feel bored, right? We feel trapped and we feel like this feeling is the only thing that is real in our lives. So this is kind of a brief overview of the chemical scale. This is something I work with guys, and it takes literally months for them to get a super solid handle on, and I just fire hosed it to you in about a couple minutes. So you might feel a little waterboarded, but that's okay, right? We're here to learn more and hopefully go further from there. So that's the chemical scale.
These guys are awesome. They explain this stuff really well. Okay, so now that you understand all that, nod with me, yes? Okay. Imagine if Captain Moroni's plan was to hand out instruction booklets to the families and leave it on the heads of the parents and the young men to learn how to fight the Lamanites. We've prepared this 10-page brochure for you. I will be picking up your son in 3 weeks, and he will have the opportunity to run his sword through the chests of adult men and attempt not to be slaughtered. Mother, it's your job to make sure he's ready. Dad, if you don't mind being a little bit supportive, that would be lovely. We'll see you in 3 weeks. One of the most agonizing things about this presentation is I know that you want us to tell you everything that you need to know about self-mastery and winning the war against Satan. I promise you, I and my team will do everything we possibly can to give you everything possible we can for free. We have created a YouTube channel for you to study for free. We have lots of things for you to study for free, okay? And it's not very fun when you look at your son and you say, okay, I can train you, or I might want to send you to boot camp so you'll come back alive. Okay. I remind you, all of the sons of Heman came back alive. They were beat up, they were bloodied, but we have all the evidence in the world to believe that after their mothers trained them and after they were well connected to God, and as Moroni encouraged them to stay connected to God, they went through some type of a boot camp on a very advanced level. All right? So if you can get through your years, if you're a teenager, if you're an adult, if you are winning all the most relevant values-based battles that you are running into, then I applaud you. We are going to give you something that we're not giving you. Sounds weird when I say that. I have been a meticulous and aggressive studier of human psychology and development for 30 years. I like to think I'm one of the smartest people on the planet when it comes to this stuff. But then 2.5 years ago, this old man guy, some Russell something Nilsson guy, okay, do you remember when 2.5 years ago the entire youth program was wiped out and replaced with this tiny little booklet? Okay? At first I was all, that's weird. And then as a scientist I started studying it. And that's a 9-page booklet, and 1 page of it is smarter than anything I've read in 30 years. But it looks small and simple, just like everything else in the gospel is. Okay? I'm going to have Richard walk you through a brief introduction on how to use what President Nilsson calls the pattern for growth. I came up with an acronym for it that my 20-year-old daughter hates. I call it the DPAR. She's, oh, that's dumb. Don't ever say that again. Okay? Discover, plan, act, reflect, cycle. The most important thing, you'll find it in your gospel library. It's under children. Those of you who are on Zoom, you'll get a link for it. It'll take you right to it, but it's in your gospel library. Okay? So what Richard is going to do is he's going to do a very quick introduction to the psychological scientific application of a powerful spiritual set of principles. A year ago in General Conference, I believe it was Elder Christensen who said we need more bridges between science and spiritual principles. So pay close attention to this, and then I will wrap things up.
Hello, everyone. Maurice asked me to take a little bit of a different twist on this one, and I'll do it fast so we have time, and to introduce a little bit like what I do for a living in like 30 seconds, and then how this discover, plan, act, and reflect model that President Nelson gave us all has impacted that, and then I'll go into some of the thoughts I have. So I flew out here on Friday from California. I live northeast of Sacramento. My wife and I lived with our 4 sons. Our daughter is currently on our mission in Lubbock, Texas. 20 years ago, when we were pregnant with her, I decided to go see a financial advisor to set up our family with smart financial principles, and somehow I became a financial advisor. I started going to classes. I got degrees in finance and business management and international business. And right now I'm what they call a fiduciary financial advisor. I own a law firm. I have a real estate license. I do a lot of insurance, and I have offices in Sacramento, Roseville, Oklahoma City, Eagle, Idaho, and then I employ some attorneys, some estate planners, some financial advisors, some CPAs, and then people like myself. And that's kind of my 1-minute overview of my business. This didn't happen by accident, though. It wasn't like I just accidentally got licensed and started a system and hired assistants and operating officers and grew things from doing nothing. There was a specific intentional plan that was rolled out that helped me in my business life. Same thing with my personal life. I'm not perfect at either one, but I'm still working on them. And that plan is reflected perfectly in President Nelson's new program that Maurice alluded to, the Discover, Plan, Act, and Reflect kind of a step-by-step process of learning how to be what word should I say? Like learning how to be very efficient in hitting our goals. So let's pretend that our goal is to like get a C-plane rating, as the lady in the back mentioned earlier, yes? Or whatever it might be, whatever that one thing is you wrote on your piece of paper. Think back to like what your big goal is. I would maybe encourage us to get a piece of paper or to have our journal and write down maybe 20 goals. For the youth, it could be to play baseball or to learn a new skill. For the older people, it might be to start something new or to stop something or to improve on something that we've been trying to do for a long time. The first step in that program, the Discover, is really what I would have called as a kid brainstorming. When we brainstorm, we just list the things that we want to do in our life. And this is what President Nelson said. The first step to setting effective goals and being successful in achieving our best selves is to do the discovery. After we have that list of items, number 2 is to act. The act step, is the plan. I skipped one. The plan is where we sit down and we usually ask ourselves questions like, who can help me with this goal? What resources do I need in order to achieve this goal? What do I need to gather in order to help me be successful in this one thing that you want to do right now in your life? When exactly will I be doing this? Can I start tomorrow? This is really the who, what, when, where, why, how. We all remember that probably from 3rd grade. At least I remember from 3rd grade. A way of maybe doing investigative skills. And that would be the planning part. Step 3, act. Act is the most difficult step in that DPAR system that Maurice alluded to. Acting is where you first put your shoulder to the wheel, for lack of a better word, where you first take that step of faith to move forward on your big goals in your life. One of the key successes to have a successful goal to act is to stay consistent. Keep at it for a while. The first couple years as an advisor for me were tough. I almost quit, I don't know how many times. It was hard to get started. Start with 0 clients, and then I got 1. And now I'm a, however old I am, man who looks younger. And when I was 21, I looked like I was like 12. And who's going to trust that person? And it was hard. And it's a hard career. Whatever your goal is, whatever that one thing is, or those 20 things are, I would encourage you to stick at them and don't quit Don't quit soon. As I was thinking of a scriptural analogy, Nephi and his brothers went back to Jerusalem to get the place from Laban. We know the story. And they failed the first time, and they failed the second time. They all ran out the city, and they decided to brainstorm what they were going to do. Then they created a plan. And then they acted upon that plan. This is what they did. They did a DPAR, for lack of a better word. When they did that, God was able to increase their capacity and enable them and help to achieve their goal, the goal that they wanted to do. Abraham Lincoln said, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. I don't know if you've ever heard that saying, but what he means is the planning part is really, really important before the acting. I'm going to skip some to go on to the end. After that, sometimes we still may not achieve our goals to the level of which we wanted to. If my one goal is to lose 30 pounds and I only lost 20, maybe I didn't achieve the goal I wanted to achieve. If my goal was to get up 5 days a week and go to the gym, but I was only able to do it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, maybe I wasn't able to fully achieve my goal. Or whatever it is that you're working on personally. Failure, here's a quote, failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of success. I have an honorary chairman in my business who's an NFL Hall of Famer. His name's Raymond Berry. He's the neatest man, lives in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I think he's 89, 90 years old. He was an NFL Hall of Famer as a player and a coach, a wide receiver to Johnny Unitas, if you know football from the 60s. I mean, it goes way back. Raymond is a good man, and he said once at one of our company conferences, he said, the opposite of success is not failure, but it's quitting. When you have a goal to achieve a certain level of self-mastery, I would implore you with as much effort as I can to not quit. Even someone like him, who's maybe one of the greatest wide receivers, maybe he or Jerry Rice or whatever team you like. I don't want to get an argument over good football players, but he probably dropped more footballs than I've ever had thrown at me. Failure is part of the process of learning, and it's normal. But that does get us to step number 4, which is to reflect. Once we've gone through these first 3 steps and now we're able to reflect back on our goals, ask yourself, how did it go? Why did you or did you not hit your mark, and what held you back if you didn't hit it? I would encourage you to write this in your journal, this 4-step pattern. Write down every single day how you're doing at hitting your goal. If you keep a notepad or a journal, and refer back to it. This would be that new method of, and I think this is great for youth, it's great for old people, it's great for everybody that's in this room. Discover, plan, act, and reflect. You can find it in the youth programs and the adult programs. Thank you.
All right, now let's bring this all together. If you have been thinking about a loved one and you're more aware of their one thing than your own thing, we always tell people, hey, this is important for all of us. This is meaning for all of us. The gospel's for all of us. You're just the broken one, so we just fix you instead of everyone else. Did I say that out loud? If you have a loved one, I'm going to give you an extremely scary challenge. President Nilsson is doing this thing that is still messing with my head a little bit, because when he says, let's repent, he makes it sound like, let's go for ice cream. And when I was a kid, let's repent means let's go behind the woodshed and get a whooping. Okay? So what's he doing? Like, isn't this fun? Don't we love repenting on a regular basis? Okay? So our parents go, yes, children, repent with happiness. You should follow the prophet. If you would like a mind-blowing, emotionally stretching, but powerful experience, I invite you to do a DPAR on you in front of your children. Just gather them together and say, I'd like to show you how fun it is to do personal development. I'd like to share with you how much joy I have when I reflect upon my areas for improvement. Okay? And just throw the 4 words up on the board: discover, plan, act, reflect, and share it out loud. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I have a certain weakness. I know one. Now, if you've read the instructions on how to do a DPAR, the parents are not supposed to pick what thing for the child to work on. So you can tell them, oh no, the instructions are, you don't pick what I work on, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to work on. Okay? So you write at the top and they're all, oh dang, it doesn't say give the kids their cell phones more often. I thought that was a sin. Okay, so you write yours across the top. So I'm now going to demonstrate how to discover. Now, first of all, I want to check something. Did any of you have a chemical reaction when I suggested that you DPAR in front of your children? Yeah, like, that would be awkward. Well, then why do you think it's awkward for them to do a DPAR with you? Let's show them that we can do this with courage. I even suggest to bishops getting up there and doing their DPAR in front of a priest quorum. Gentlemen, I'm going to demonstrate the repentance process for you because I am a sinner. What? Bishop's a sinner? Yeah. We got some suggestions, bishops. Okay, all right. Do your discover work. In fact, invite your kids to have an opinion. I think I should work on maintaining patience with my children. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Would anyone like to share some ideas with me? Duct tape your mouth and hide in the closet? I'm sincere. I was actually hoping for useful comments. I don't got one. Okay? Show them. How do you discover how to improve? What is your method? Do you read books? Do you ask people? Do you study it? What do you do? Most people I meet, even adults, don't know how to discover. I will be working with adults and I'll say, how do you think you could learn more about that? And they're all like, well, did you know there are books on that? Really? Do you know how to find a book? On what? Okay? So, I was working with some guys, like, we were Googling stuff. I had no idea you could Google stuff like that. I thought it was just look for inappropriate stuff. Okay, we're not going there today. Okay. Show them, based on last General Conference, there are 2 beautiful talks, not the most recent one, but into the fall, that 1% growth slope is good. Show them that 1% growth is good, and then validate when they improve 1% that that's good. Okay? Show them that sexual self-mastery battles are not weird. Welcome to having a human body. Okay? Some parents tell me, I don't want to encourage them to get involved in sexual things just because I was really messed up like that when I was a kid. Oh, so you want them to think that they're the only ones that are messed up? You mean you want me to tell them that I repented and I became healthy and now I can run a family and have a clear-headed mind after being a messed up teenager? Yeah, that is the gospel. Oh, yeah. Okay? So if you've been a sinner before, stop hiding it from your kids, because they're going to think that you never were one. So if they do sins, then they're broken. It's very common in our culture to take our kids regularly to the doctor for health checkups. It's very common for our culture to take our kids in for dental checkups. In fact, last time I heard, if you don't take your kids in for 6 to once a year dental checkups, you're one of those moms. We know about you. Okay? So then why is it weird to do 6 to 12 month mental health checkups? Why is that weird? I was talking to a stake president the other day. Bishop has shared similar concerns. We get these guys moving along. They're coming along. 3 months before they're supposed to go on a mission, oh, by the way, I have a serious problem. And you're like, you're telling me now? Like, yeah, I'm sure we can have it fixed in about 2 months. Do you know how long it takes to rewire the brain for this kind of stuff? Okay? This is a medical condition. This is a psychologically complex condition. Do you really think your kids are going to tell you the truth? Can we just not be silly about that? Okay? Well, if my kids don't tell me the truth, why would they tell a professional the truth? Can I tell you how many guys in my Sons of Human training system, everybody knows you lie to your parents, not your group. Duh. Okay? They have had years of misrepresenting the truth practice. But when they're in the presence of a professional who knows how to discern lies because of body language, etc., and they're not bought into any specific answer, we can get a lot of important information. But it's not always about sinning. It's about other things that could be disruptive to their futures. How about we do mental health checkups more frequently? Do check-ins with your bishop to make sure your brain and spirit are super sharp. We have this weird idea that when you go to see the bishop, it's when you've done something wrong. It's when you've messed something up. Okay? Bishops are these inspired stewards over our presence, and they can help, using the DPAR system that President Nielsen gives us, help us move from average to better, and from better to great, etc., etc. Please, youth and even adults, follow through on those meetings with your bishop. And when he says, let's do a DPAR, don't get all weird about it. Go, let's do this. Okay? And if you really want to, I can put the pressure on him and say, show me yours first, Bishop. Okay. He's not feeling well today, so he won't remember that tomorrow. Now, it's very comfortable for us to ask questions like, hey, son, are you pleased with your progress with your football skills? That's not a weird question, right? Are you pleased with your progress with your piano skills? Why is it a weird thing to say, are you pleased with your progress with your sexual self-mastery? Are we thinking that teenagers don't have sexual self-mastery dynamics they're dealing with? Oh, you got a human body. You're going to make it to age 19 with no problems at all. Are you kidding me? Okay? Just ask, are you pleased? Now, what do you do if they hesitate for a second? Are you pleased with your progress with your football skills? You do know there are specialists in football skills. We can help you become one of the most advanced athletes. If that's something you really want to get good at, cool. Okay? Are you pleased with your piano skills? I'd prefer to be better. I'll find money. I'll get a goat and milk it. Okay? And we'll sell it. And we'll make enough money for your piano lessons. Okay? We'll find a way. Parents will find a way. Okay? But do you say, I will become your football trainer, I will become your piano teacher when you don't know enough about it? Okay? This blows people's minds, but did you know that young men and young women actually prefer sexual self-mastery? I've had people say, they're adolescent boys, they're as dumb as rocks. They don't give a flying rip about any type of mastery. Gentlemen, is that offensive? Okay, do I even need to ask, do you prefer sexual self-mastery? Absolutely, okay? We don't want to be weirdos. We don't want to be perverts. We don't want to be that guy that does that one thing. Okay? We want to be amazing. We want to be phenomenal. We want to be awesome. So just say, are you pleased with your progress? Don't be weird about it. Okay? Just go, you're a teenager. Of course it's going to be difficult. Of course it's going to be challenging. Let's stop being weird about it. Okay, let's wrap up. I don't know if we've convinced you of the investment of Satan in your lives, but if there's one thing I want to make sure I convince you of, is the prophets have known that you, who were teenagers in the 70s, 80s, 90s, etc., you are the noble and great ones of the final generation. Okay? We know that Satan wants you to not care or to feel disqualified or to be distracted. If you can't buy into the idea that you have access to divine superpowers, when I found out that a middle child of a potato farming family in Idaho could plug into the same power that Moses used to part the Red Sea, because I have the same qualifications Moses had, which was, I'm inadequate. I'm not enough. I can't do a big deal by myself. I can't win the war against Satan by myself. But even this little nobody can play a role in doing miracles. If you want to see one little miracle, what did you just see with these men talking? Okay? Absolutely phenomenal. I met these men when they were sad. I met these men when they were crying. I met these men when they were hopeless. And they lead armies of men now, because we are the noble and great ones. So when you're ready to break out of whatever satanic game that's being played with your mind, when you're ready to hook in, lock in, grab on, just dial up the bishop and say, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just like Nephi. I'm clueless. I have no idea how to make this work. Just talk to me. The bishop will bring every piece of wisdom he has. He'll bring every resource he has. And if he can fulfill all your needs with his resource, he'll do so. And if he needs help, he knows how to ask for it. Okay? The power is there. The resources are there. Those that be with us are more than those that be with them. We are going to win this psychological war. And we would like you to be our fellow warriors. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.